This week, instead of trying to do a full tutorial or give you some information via a step-by-step, what I thought I'd do is take some time to break some of the myth cycles that seem to be sort of pervading various advice sources at the moment. So I have my coffee, I have my list, and I'm ready to go. First on that very list is the concept that ambient light, so that's light that's coming from your room, the windows, lamps, whatever, affects the quality of the scans that you get with your machine. This is absolutely not true, and I'd like to say that with as much emphasis as I can. This is not true. Now, some people may have been subject to the lucky pants syndrome, and that's basically that if they had their lighting a certain way, when they got a successful result in what they were trying to achieve, they've assigned that success to the lighting or something else going on in the room at the time. This, unfortunately, is very positive thinking, but it's also not true. Basically, the lighting in your room does not have any impact, and here's why. Actually, before I tell you why, some of the people in my Facebook group will already know this picture, but take a look at this picture and tell me which of the images on the left or the right was scanned in a pitch black room, and which of those images was scanned in a room with all lights on, in the daytime, with an LED torch pointing directly into the scanning area of the machine. Can't tell? That's right, because the machine has its own light source. This light source is very, very strong, and it's designed to flood that area with an equal level of light, allowing the machine to capture as much detail as it can and provide you with the results that it can give for what you're feeding into it. So, successful results are down to what you feed the machine plus how it processes that information. They are not at all to do with whatever lamps, lights, blinds, or whatever else you've got going on in your craft room or craft space. So please, let's put that one to bed. Okay, number 2, calibration seems to be the suggested solution for all woes. This process, which has a specific name, and I believe, I'll show you a picture, but I believe it's scanning cutting position alignment. This has one sole purpose, and it's to realign the cutting head with the scanner. So, for example, if you are doing the direct cut function and your outlines are offset from the shape that's been scanned, then you would do that process, and that is designed to recalibrate the machine and fix that. It does not have any impact on any other function or any other process in the scan and cut machine. So don't waste your time doing it when you don't have to. It's there for a reason and it's there to help, but it's not going to help you with anything else. Number 3, the scanning lever on the side of the machine. Some people are under the impression that this changes the depth of the blade and that therefore they may have to change the settings or something else, or that it gives you the half cut feature. It doesn't. What it does do, and this is only for DX models obviously because the CM models don't have this lever on the side, what it does do is it raises the scanning bed. So you know where I was saying about the light source? Basically that comes from overhead, and in order for the DX machines to allow thicker materials through, that scanning bed is raised by pushing that lever from position 1 to position 2. That's all it does. It has no impact on the blade depth settings or the pressure. Let me show you that in action. So here you can see into the scan and cut machine, the DX model, and I'm basically flicking that switch from position 1 to 2, and you can see those wheels that are inside the machine are raising up away from the cutting mat. There you go, that's what that does. Now on that basis, cutting thicknesses. Quite often I see questions pop up about, I'd like to try cutting this particular material or substrate or whatever. And the general responses are, oh, the CM models will cut up to this thickness and the DX models will cut up to this thickness, which is thicker than the CM models. So you should be fine with that. That's not necessarily the case. The thicker the material, basically the less dense it needs to be for the machine to successfully cut it. For example, let's take 2 millimeters as a thickness. If you put something through the machine that is 2 millimeters thick, then it's likely going to need to be something like foam sheet. Something very soft, very lightweight, and not dense. Remember, you're dragging a blade through that material. You would not be able to cut 2 millimeter MDF, 2 millimeter metal, or 2 millimeter Perspex with the scan and cut machine. Of course, you can draw onto those surfaces and you can etch into those surfaces, but you won't be able to cut at that maximum thickness. Basically, the thicker and denser the material, the less chance there will be of it successfully cutting. As a general rule, if you can cut the substrate or the material you're putting through with scissors under normal circumstances, then your scan and cut machine should be able to raise enough depth and pressure in order to cut through that. That's a great way of thinking about it, because if you can't cut MDF with a pair of scissors, how on earth would you expect to cut it with a tiny little blade in a desktop cutting machine? That's normally reserved for the likes of CNC routers or laser cutters. So just apply that rule. In addition to that rule, think about the designs that you're using with those particular materials. So 1.5 millimeter grey board, for example, the machine would be able to cut. It might take several passes to achieve that, but it should be able to actually cut it. But you wouldn't cut the kind of detailed cut that you use for vinyl, you wouldn't use the kind of detailed design you used for vinyl with 1.5 millimeter thick grey board. At that thickness, you're looking at simple, basic shapes with maybe a single aperture. You're not going to get a fancy filigree design with very acute corners. So just keep those two things in mind when you're thinking about what can and can't be cut and done with the scan and cut machine. And the final one, and it's one of my biggest bugbears, is tape. I see so many people putting tape down the side of the mats, sticking tape all over the mats, putting it everywhere, using plumber's tape, masking tape, sellotape, this, that and the other. If your mat doesn't have enough stick to hold your material in place, there is absolutely no point in putting tape on that product, on that cardstock, on that mat, because the mat needs to hold the cut shape from underneath in order for the shape to stay in place while the cutting process is happening. The solution there is to either get a new mat or follow one of the tutorials on YouTube or somewhere else, or even my tutorials, for re-sticking your mat, cleaning and re-sticking your mat. There are exceptions. For example, if you are using something that's very stiff and rigid and thick, like glass, metal or wood, you may want to tape the edges down while you're etching or drawing onto that. And that's because the mat is bendy, but the material is not. So it might actually dislodge itself as the mat is running through the machine. That's definitely one exception. Another exception is if you are using a material that needs to be applied from the top. So for example, the foil quill, you would need to position some foil on top of your card, so there is no stick to hold the foil in place. So tape is good for that. In addition, you've seen me recently use double-sided tape, in fact, to stick from underneath with the metal blanks for engraving, but you can use strong tape on the top of that as well, as long as your design is not going to get outside of that area. So yes, there are exceptions and valid reasons for using tape, but if you are just using basic bog standard cardstock, paper or acetate, using tape on the sides of that is absolutely pointless. It's a waste of tape and a waste of time. In addition, tape should not be anywhere outside the cutting area. The reasons for this are, at the top and the bottom, there are scanned registration marks, which the machine picks up to to identify your mat. And down the side is where the rollers run. And if you're getting little tiny bits of adhesive on that all the time from the tape squidging out the sides, then over time that builds up and it will cause issues with your mat's loading. So, tape with cardstock, no. Stop it now. I don't care how long you've been doing it or why you've been doing it, stop it. Please, please stop it. Also, by the way, with tape, if you're putting it on your cutting mat, if depending on the strength of the tape, it can lift adhesive and actually make your mat less adhesive, which is defeating the object. 1 second. Ooh, that one I was so passionate about, I dried my throat out. Anyway, I could waffle on about that one for hours and hours and hours. It's just such what's the word? One of those things that defeats the object. It's kind of counterintuitive and it makes absolutely no sense. I understand people that are a little nervous about using the cutting mats, but used properly, used effectively, and used with the right materials, etc., 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 they work. They do work. And they do what they do, and they do what they're designed to do. Using all of this extra adhesive and things, it's just complicating things beyond the point of anybody like myself being able to help, because you're throwing in all sorts of challenges. Anyway, so that's 5 myths busted, kinda. So just to recap, ambient lighting, no effect on your scanned results. Calibration, it's not a panacea. It does not fix all woes. It does fix one particular woe quite well. Scanning lever, only for increasing the capacity of the machine to take thicker materials on DX machines. Oh, by the way, the ambient light thing and the calibration thing, they apply to both models of the machine, the CM and the DX. Tape, again, applies to anything. And the cutting thickness applies to both machines. So there you go. I hope you found that useful, and maybe it'll save you some time in the future and some actual extra woes. If you've any other myths that you do want busting or even investigating, I am open to ideas. Please feel free to leave your comments below the video on YouTube, or of course in the comments section on my blog, or if you are now a member of my Facebook group, my Scan and Cut Facebook group, not the other two, then please feel free to come and ask the question there too. In the meantime, thanks for watching